Today we're diving headfirst into a debate surrounding a topic that's been known to raise some eyebrows. Are martial arts really suitable for kids? So on one hand, we've got your helicopter parents of the world who try to keep their kids out of any form of discomfort. And on the other hand, you've got the father who overworks his son to the point where he gets injured just because he's trying to live vicariously through him. So we're about to look at the research to determine some potential pros and cons for kids in the combat sports. I'll give my opinions along the way, along with some key takeaways at the end as a medical professional who has treated athletes of all ages for almost a decade now. All of this in order for you to make the right decision for your child, or hopefully provide some valuable information if you're a coach that teaches kids in the combat sports. The main concern I hear from most parents regarding letting their children participate in the combat sports is the risk for injury. So I'm going to take you through 3 pretty good articles looking at injury rates in different sporting environments to hopefully help you guys make an informed decision. Now, over time, there have been several analyses that have been done to look at the risk for injury, but I sifted through the ones that are particular to this situation. And I found one of the only articles that addresses adolescents in a variety of sports. This study looked at the injury rates of about 500 adolescent athletes participating in different traditional sports, including soccer, swimming, tennis, weight training, and even included in the study was judo. The rate of injury was measured per 1,000 training or playing hours. And I want you to remember this detail for later because it's going to be important. So as they show up on the screen, I want you to notice how low these numbers are. And this is pretty typical for most epidemiological studies that look at risk for injury. And even though we see these numbers are relatively low, we still see judo in the number 2 spot. Now, I wasn't able to find any bigger epidemiological studies that covered adolescents specifically in the combat sports. However, I found these next 2 articles to be pretty helpful. This next study is a systematic review and meta-analysis that looked at the rate of injury in professional athletes from ages 18 to 44. So within the studies included within this article, the average rate of injury was reported at 228.7, much higher than the previous article. However, the results of the different studies in the article varied wildly. Plus, they measured this per 1,000 athlete exposures, which they defined as one athlete being exposed to the possibility of incurring an injury while participating in a single fight. So of course that's going to be much higher when they're only measuring the possibility of an injury occurring during competition, rather than including all of the other training hours as well. So make sure you keep that in mind. So this study looked at the rates of injury in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by experience level. And since the question is whether or not it's good for kids to start the combat sports, I think it pays to know the injury rates in beginners versus experienced players. And they found that novice BJJ athletes demonstrated an odds ratio of training session injury approximately twice higher than advanced athletes. Interestingly, they also found that the rates of injury during competition didn't vary between the 2 groups. They found some more interesting stuff, but for the purposes of this conversation, less experienced athletes are much more likely to be injured in training. So let's recap what the research suggests regarding injury. Combat athletes probably have a higher risk for injury overall compared to the traditional sports, which should seem intuitive given the nature of the combat sports. So novice athletes, which your kid will be if they start the combat sports, are more likely to be injured during training, which segues nicely into my first takeaway of the video. In every single article, training volume was cited as a strong predictor for injury, and overuse mechanism was cited as the number 1 cause for injury, especially in young and novice athletes. If you get one thing from this video, avoid overtraining at all costs. The magic number seemed to be about 10 hours of training per week in most cases. And I'll just throw this in there, this is also my experience in treating athletes. Either the parents make them train too much, or parents not knowing when to pull the reins in on their kid if they want to train 24/7. So we have a couple of potential cons, but none that can't be mitigated with some proper planning. So now let's look at some research that may convince you that the combat sports might not be a bad idea. This article found that adolescents who practice the combat sports had a higher bone mineral density in upper extremity, lower extremity, and pelvic regions than those who didn't. I would argue that this is a huge benefit. And although there's a wide variety of literature on the psychological impacts for those who practice the combat sports, some of the literature suggests that the combat sports may actually help with the development and refinement of concepts like discipline and mental toughness, finding purpose, and the desire to test yourself. Now, this literature again varies wildly in how they define these nebulous terms, like toughness or purpose. But here's where my experience comes in. Yes, you will have kids that take what they know and use it for the wrong reason. But having treated adolescents as patients and having been in the combat sports for a while, I've noticed a few things. My experience tells me that when it comes to things like confidence and risk management, those who have experience in the combat sports tend to be better at these things, at least in the way that I define them. Kids are much less likely to engage in physical altercations if provoked. And if they are provoked, they handle themselves much more effectively. And even more importantly, they carry themselves with more confidence in general. Not to mention the strong sense of community that accompanies a lot of these sports. sports. Again, this is completely anecdotal, but worth noting that I'm not the only one that holds this view. So let's add bone mineral density and potential psychological benefits for the list of pros. And the last topic of discussion is based purely off of my experience as a physical therapist, and that is the variety of movement that the combat sports offers. There is no doubt in my mind that those who have experience in the combat sports move better than those who don't. In my opinion, the variety of movements that is required for the combat sports is comparable to sports like gymnastics or dance, ones that don't promote a lot of repetitive unilateral movements. I see a massive difference in the overall mobility and motor control of my patients who have experience with the combat sports. And the earlier that motor development can be refined and reinforced, the better. So let's add motor development to the list of pros. Okay, so the main takeaways. Number one is easily manage your training volume. Don't be the mom or dad who tries to live vicariously through their kid and unnecessarily increase your child's risk for injury. A good rule of thumb is to try to keep the combination of training and competition hours around 10 hours per week. Second, consider the health benefits of the combat sports, including increased bone mineral density and potential psychological well-being. And lastly, it's my opinion that kids should be engaged in a variety of movements at a young age. The combat sports do an incredible job of introducing a variety of movements early on in life that will undoubtedly translate into better musculoskeletal health as they age. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.